Tank Bigsby is our next guy. Running back, Auburn, 6 foot, 210 pounds, 9.5-inch hands, 4.56 in the 40, 119-inch broad jump, 21 reps on the bench, and 32.5 vert. Last year in 12 games, he had 179 rushing attempts, 970 yards, 10 touchdowns, 30 receptions, 180 yards, and no additional touchdowns. He's 21 years old.
Yeah, I'll be 22 when the season starts.
In August.
So Tank Bigsby, it's a real good name for him, like a big, strong Tank Bigsby guy. And we just talked about this literally a second ago with Zach Charbonnet, where he's like, oh, some teams have a really good offensive line. Complete opposite with Tank Bigsby.
Complete opposite.
I thought his offensive line was honestly one of the worst offensive line of all these running backs we talk.
Yep.
He was hit behind the line of scrimmage a ton. Like a ton. Like I couldn't this poor guy. It's like, so I was like, I have to give him some kudo points for that. Right. So and I did. I came away with watching Tank Bigsby because I put him in that 4th tier, and I'm like, I could see him moving up.
He's in my 3rd tier.
So here's the thing. I like his tape overall. You know, he's got really good size. He runs really well inside. Makes some really, and I came away really impressed. Like he makes some really good cuts for his size.
Very good cuts.
His start and stop ability was pretty impressive for a guy being 6 foot, 210 pounds. See, I'm talking myself already putting him in upper tier.
Yeah, moving on up.
He runs really strong. I mean, this is a guy who averaged 5.4 yards per carry in the SEC with the worst offensive line I saw of all these players. So that says a lot. And he's really secure with the football. Only has 1 career fumble. He's okay in the passing game, a little bit limited there. Had his best year this past year in the passing game with those 30 receptions. That was his best year overall. He has really good contact balance as well.
Very good.
So real solid overall thick running back that can get the job done. Like NFL teams are really going to like what they see there.
Yep.
I felt like he was inconsistent. Like that was part of my notes, but then I kept going back to like, was he inconsistent though because of the offensive line? Like, is that a part of it? I mean, he did have his best year in the passing game this year. I don't know if that's overall a natural fit for him. Like, I don't know if an NFL team's going to use him that way. I think he can do it, but I don't know if an NFL team's necessarily going to use him in that mold.
It kind of reminds me of like Jonathan Taylor, how like he ended up catching a bunch of passes. It was like, that's not naturally his gifting, but like he's good enough that if they asked him to do it, he could.
Yeah, and that makes sense as well.
30 receptions, 180 yards. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't something
6-point average. Yeah, nothing crazy.
That's nothing crazy.
He's an upright runner as well, so he does lose a little bit power there, which kind of again that hurts a little bit there. His pass protection, I didn't come away overly like in love with, and he's also one of those one speed runners, right? Like he goes and then he's going, so you can see him get caught from behind a lot because he's just that, and that's not always a bad thing. It's just that's the kind of runner he is. Overall, I came in with Tank Bigsby as like a very solid prospect. I probably have him in that 4th tier now because I want to see where he goes. Because he could be somebody that ends up in a really good situation, or he could be Zach Moss, right? Like he could easily be Zach Moss to me.
Yep.
And Zach Moss goes to the Bills, and people got really excited about it. Like that's what he could be, right? But he could be bored.
I really like Tank. In a year where there were guys that I really liked, and we'll talk about it more in the next show, that I always really liked as like Devy guys, and I was really excited about. And then I watched their tape and I was like, oh no, I don't like this guy at all. Actually, this was one of the ones where he held true for me. Watching his tape, the things I liked about him early on, the things I liked about when I watched him live or highlights or things like that, all still very much still held true. You're absolutely right. His offensive line was terrible. His biggest weakness, it's funny because it's his biggest weakness, but it also doesn't bother me that much. He does not have patience. That is something that I do think he needs to develop more, is being a little bit more patient. But that being said, I love his running style because he finds a hole and gets there right now.
Yep.
Like it's this downhill running style that I very much so like. And he's almost like one of those like luge skiers, or like when he's out there, like he's got a nice dead leg, but he's not trying to string multiple moves together.
He doesn't.
It's one move and go. One move and go.
I put that in my notes as well. Like I don't know that he's laterally going to be able to string together things to make guys miss in the hole, but he can string a play out, and as soon as he sees that hole, boom, go. You know what I mean? He puts his foot in the ground. He's laterally explosive within like one move. I don't know that he could do that back and forth.
Right.
And because I think he's just too big a little bit. He's
too big. But he moves. He does it
smooth,
really well and smoother side. Like he can literally stop and then go. For a guy for his size, it's pretty.
There was an exact play like that behind the line of scrimmage against Alabama where I walked away like, man, that was a great play because, I mean, we're talking about a lot of first-round defensive talent on the Alabama team, and there were 3 guys in the backfield, and the design play was not there. He stopped on a dime and then beat everybody to the outside, which, unlike a lot of guys here, he's not a guy that's constantly trying to bounce it to the outside. Like, he's going to take the lane and he's going to go. He had enough vision and in that moment enough patience. You know, a lot of times he doesn't, but in that moment enough patience just to be able to diagnose the play, be able to be athletic enough to stop and redirect. And that's tough to do with that type of defense and then still beat guys to the outside. Shows me there's enough speed there. He's not an elite speed guy. No one will mistake him for that.
4, 5, 6.
But there's enough speed there, and especially the initial acceleration.
Right.
I think he accelerates really, really well. So,
and he had a good 10-yard split, which speaks to that.
Makes perfect sense. And for a guy that weighed a little bit less than I would have thought, man, he loves to deliver contact. He's the opposite of Charbonnet in that sense, whereas I don't think he's as powerful naturally as Charbonnet is. I think Charbonnet's lower half is stronger than Bigsby, but Bigsby is going to make you feel it every opportunity he can.
And I love that.
Yep.
That is not boring tape for me to watch.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I had a lot of the same notes. I wrote in here, verbatim almost a lot of these things, but plays faster than his time speed. You know what I mean? Like I did see that on tape where he was beating guys to the outside. He might not have that top gear, and that's probably where this 4, 5, 6 comes from. But I think the burst is there. He can get past people with speed, and he can laterally put it together. One move up the field. He gets upfield quickly. In the NFL, these are things that you need. This guy would fit great in his own scheme. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like this is like a
one cut and go.
Glove in hand type of fit for Tank Bigsby and that kind of system. So this is going to depend on where he goes, because I don't know that he is a guy that would fit in every system that well. But if he lands in a Miami, if he lands in a San Francisco type of place, or any of those offshoots that run that same kind of zone scheme, I think he could be very successful. And that's where I see him. He's a guy that's going to, at least for me, it's going to depend on landing spot a lot as far as how high his ceiling is. But I think he's a good running back regardless, and I think he can be a good player. But he can be a fantasy difference maker, I think, in one of those zones.
And I think, Matt, you can say that about a lot of these running backs right here. And I think that's what's exciting about this class. And we got a lot of the juice flowing because a lot of these guys have a lot of exciting attributes.
Right.
But again, there's only so many jobs to go to, right? Like. And we even see now some of these teams are holding off on some of these running backs. Like like Zeke's still out there, and these guys will find homes. Kareem Hunt's still out there. So, and some of these guys even sign like their jobs aren't 100% secure. That when they go to certain places, even though we like to land the spot now, that's going to change after the NFL draft, and it's why we re-rank these guys after the NFL draft. And like this year, we're going to do a show, and we always try to do the show like immediately after the NFL draft is over. Like so that's Sunday. We'll all be together, and we're going to record the podcast that Sunday. So the podcast should be out by that Sunday night for your running back class. We're going to rank these guys in order of how we like them in Superflex and PPR. So we give you a little bit longer shows. We kind of break them down a bit Sunday. And I think this class is full of guys like Tank Bigsby, right? Like if put in the right situation, put in the right scheme with the right opportunity, they're going to be dynasty fantasy football, assets. So there's so many of them. It's impossible to say who's going to be the guy you really want, because there's honestly 8 of these guys that you're like, okay, they could be fantasy football relevant.
Yeah.
But will they get the opportunity? Because some of these guys, unfortunately, are going to end up on teams that we just don't love the situation.
Yeah, for me, he currently ends up just a notch above Zach Charbonnet. So he ended up as my running back 4. Oh, wow. With a 74.3. So big fan of Tank Bigsby. One of only 4 running backs in this class to get above a 74. Solid player.
So you have the highest.
I think Tank will be above Charbonnet for me also.
Okay.
I haven't set that in stone yet, but watching him, he just has more juice. I like his running style. I think it translates a little bit better to fantasy production as well, without like a huge volume. You know,
makes me feel like I need to dig back in then because I'm the lowest. And anytime that you two guys like a player equally, and I don't like, and I like them, so like I feel like I'm missing something.
You're not
in a
far
different
off.
tier. So I feel like I need to dive back in a little bit deeper,
and
which I'll have to do.
To be fair, like he is not that far away from Charbonnet, like less than a half point away from Charbonnet and A-Chain for me.
And
so they're like right there.
I might have Charbonnet a little bit lower also.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
sure.
So that might be the reasoning as well. So don't go crazy, Rich. But I mean, it just might be a whole
I probably didn't give him that. I think I missed him in that tier. I didn't put him in the same tier with Kenny McIntosh, Dwayne McBride, Zach Evans, and Roshan Johnson. So that's where I messed up. So it's probably this. I literally just went by the wayside here. So I'll have to dig back in and bump them up.
That's basically my next tier. Yeah, I just have them a tier higher. So, but I have a lot of those same players in the tier below.
Okay.